You're listening to Politics UK with me, Dennis Sewell, from the World Service of the BBC. Sometimes international cooperation, even in areas such as fighting crime, can have unpredictable and unwanted side effects. David Cameron recognised this in the Commons this week in response to an opposition demand that Britain should promptly sign up to a new European directive on human trafficking.
It is right always to look at these directives and ask not just, are we doing the things that are already in that directive, but what could be the other consequences of signing up? Very, very sensible thing to do. The last government signed far too many things without ever thinking about what the consequences were.
Why the caution? Well, 7 years ago, the last government signed up to the European Arrest Warrant, which allows European police and prosecutors to cut through most of the bureaucracy and legal palaver of extradition. The idea was to bring offenders to book more quickly and efficiently when they'd perhaps escaped across the border into another EU state. But there have been a number of problems with the way the warrant has been used in practice. Andrew Simiu is a young student from North London whose life has been turned into a Kafkaesque nightmare. After returning from a holiday in Greece, he found himself under arrest and then was duly shipped back to Greece to face months in jail, waiting to go on trial for manslaughter. His lawyers say that Andrew's case is simply one of mistaken identity, that he wasn't even present in the Zakynthos nightclub where a man died. Mr Simiu's local MP, the Conservative Nick Dubois, has taken up his case, and it's one that some campaigners say goes right to the heart of the contract between a British citizen and the state. And though the government has promised a review of all extradition arrangements, last week the Home Secretary announced that Britain would sign up to the next stage, the European Investigation Order, which allows other EU police forces to initiate investigations in Britain. I invited Nick Dubois MP into the BBC's Westminster studio, and we were joined by Alex Deane, a barrister and the director of the Civil Liberties campaigning group Big Brother Watch. First, I asked Nick Dubois what his main objective was.
The primary concern is Andrew. The primary concern for us and his family is to bring him to trial. No government is going to willingly interfere in the internal processes of another country. But the young man has been in jail for 10 months on bail. My job is to bring it to the table at the highest level in government, which is what I tried to do.
Alex Deane, was this sort of situation predictable, do you think, when the European arrest warrant was first mooted?
Not only was it predictable, it was predicted by many people in politics and in the law. It is said with no disrespect to our European colleagues, I think we've got a first-class legal system in this country, and that is not matched uniformly across the European Union. We are now seeing people being requested, extradited, sent to face charges in other countries which do not have a comparably good justice system. And with the example we're discussing today, Nick's constituent's case, it seems to me, having worked in the law for some years in this country, I can say with some confidence that I cannot imagine any British prosecutor bringing a charge with so little evidence as there is in the case against his constituent. That is a worrying state of affairs when a young man of this country can be dragged away and spend time, quite considerable time, in a Greek prison on such flimsy evidence.
In this case, what Andrew Simiu is actually accused of doing would be a crime if it happened in England.
Yes.
Now, does the European arrest warrant cover those sort of loads of offences that are not offences in Britain but might be in some other European countries with different legal system?
It absolutely does. Crimes that are not recognised in the United Kingdom, such as the Portuguese offence of criminal defamation, can still see people being extradited from this country. And indeed the European Investigation Order, which accompanies the European Arrest Warrant, not only means that those people can be extradited, but that it is legal for foreign law authorities to gather evidence in the United Kingdom, to grant foreign police the right to carry out real-time interception of communications, to monitor a person's bank account or demand bodily samples, their DNA or their fingerprints. All of those things can be done for something that's not even a crime in this country. And to take another controversial example, whatever we might think of Holocaust denial, it's not a crime in this country, where we believe fundamentally in freedom of speech. Nevertheless, a German investigator could request not only that someone be extradited, but that British police forces do all of that work for them.
Nick Dubois, we've got ourselves into the situation now that the Prime Minister is answering you and others at Prime Minister's questions, saying that he's a bit concerned that we've signed up too readily to all of these sorts of things. And that must be quite encouraging. And yet we have the Home Secretary signing up to this European investigation order and taking the process on further without any real scrutiny. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think this is so true of so many directives that can come out of Europe. On the face of it, there may be a very good case for speeding up processes. But as the former Home Secretary, David Blunkett, realised, when he rushed through effectively the EAW, he's now admitting several years later that that was an error. There needs to be substantive scrutiny on legislation, on this type of directive. We are now faced with another one that I can see why it's meant to allow investigations on behalf of other officers in this country, which some people may say is quite a reasonable thing. But I tell you, when you tie that up with a European arrest warrant, it's the combination of the two that people should be worried about, actually. So I think that's got to be made very clear in this review that's coming up as well.
Nick Dubois and Alex Deane. And that's all from Politics UK this week. I'm Dennis Sewell, and the editor is Elaine Thomas.